Welcome back, everyone. And we are going to be doing episode 96 of Impact Makers. And if you watched our last one, our dress and backgrounds, they're all similar. It's because we pushed stop on the last one and had more to talk about. And so we wanted to do our next episode. So we went right into episode 96. And what we wanted to dive more into, because Dennis gave us some great insights in the last episode, episode 95, was we wanted to dive more into value and what that means from a firm and a client perspective. And let me just take a minute or two here to give you some background into Dennis um, and why we value his insight and what he can bring to firms and the profession so much in this area of understanding value. So I've known Dennis for about 15 years now. His firm was an early adopter firm when I was doing lean for CPA firms back in the day when I was first starting that, and I believe it was 2010, Dennis, that we worked with
Yep.
your firm. So I was in my second year of actually going outside my firm and offering lean services, and that led to me starting my own consulting practice and so on and so forth. So longtime client, managing partner of a regional firm in Alabama, and I've just seen Dennis as one of the more progressive CEOs of any firm I've come across over the years. Um, and value has been paramount in how I see him shaping his leadership of that firm over the years, both from a firm perspective and a client perspective. So Dennis, I'm going to have you dive into a couple of topics. Number one, share a little bit more about what you did in the area of Project 40 at your firm. It was an outcome of some of the lean work we did and really how that focused on value internally to the firm from a people perspective. And then we're going to move into value from a client perspective. But start with sharing with our audience a little bit more about Project 40 and how that was focused on value internally to the firm.
Okay. Have to, man, going back into memory banks, 15 years, Dustin. Um, it's an interesting story. For years, obviously, I grew up in the profession, came out, worked for a national firm back in the mid 80s, and we were grinders. When I became a part of what was Advisor Group that I led for many years, same way, we were grinders. 90, 100 hours a week. 100 hours a week was typical during tax season, 70 the rest of the year. The owners of the firm and a lot of the employees. Um, and always in the back of my mind, I said, why is it like this? Why is there not some other way? Couldn't we do things differently? How could we approach the models differently and still accomplish our goals? And it just sat there, for years. And so we had started engaging Guston in lean projects. He had done a project for us on our individual tax practice, and I believe you were back for our entity tax lean project a couple of years later. And Dustin was like, we're finishing up the beginning stages of that project. The first day meeting, at the end of the meeting, he says, anybody else got something that they um, want to throw out as a goal? And I said, yeah, I have one more thing. I would like to reduce or eliminate overtime during tax season. And like some of the listeners probably goes like, yeah, right. We had people chuckle. Dustin looked at me and said, are you serious? I said, yeah. He said, that's a long-term objective. I said, oh, absolutely. Um, and so we put it in the charter as a long-term goal and we let it sit on purpose. We went into the next tax season and we're working hard. We've done a lot of good things with lean. We're doing things better, but we're still working a lot. And toward the end of that tax season, we had some of our bright younger staff said, "Do you really think we could do that? We could reduce eliminate overtime during tax season?" I said, "Yeah, you can do that. You absolutely can." So we started on a long journey that ultimately led to us radically reducing overtime during tax season to where the firm for years has not worked more than 40 to 45 hours during tax season on average for the employees, uh, getting the same amount of work done because we found ways that we could do things differently. And how we this to me was trying to give something back to employees. We didn't want to do this so that we could get more work. We were trying to find how we could have a better life work balance. And I say life first on purpose. And so that was the impetus behind that. But the employees bought into the idea because we empowered them to have the opportunity to give input, and actually build the model. And out of that first year after we did that, we reduced our overtime 25%. Still got the same amount of work done as the year before because we were able to measure and see the volumes. Second year, we reduced it 20 more percent. Just take those 2 years alone, 45% reduction in hours worked, but getting the same amount of work done. And we did that through making sure we engaged our employees, or better yet, empowered our employees to have influence in how we could do things differently and do things better. And I felt like that was a way to give our employees more value.
I,
And it wasn't an intentional thing. I mean, it was just how it kind of works out. But, anyway.
we love that, because that's the principle of continuous improvement at work that we talk about a lot. That you make improvements, but then it's not a one and done. That continuous improvement is an evolution, and it's something that everybody is responsible for in an organization, not just senior leadership, not just staff. It's everybody that's responsible for it. And you gave them a common mission. So love what you're doing with Project 40 and what you have done with Project 40. I want to turn our attention now to the client side of things. And another innovative change that you made at Aviso. We're probably going back 4 or 5 years now. Time flies, right? So, and not many firms have done this. There's been a lot of talk in the last 25 years about this. Not many firms have actually done it, but you can say you have, and that is, and I'm going to tie it into understanding value from a client's point of view, the external client point of view. It's more than just the time, the billable time on the engagement. Even though we like to bill off of rate times hours, you flipped that script and said, no, we really want to focus on value from our clients' point of view. And it's not just the time that we have in their engagements. It's what we're actually, the guidance, the advice, what we're delivering to the client to help them succeed. And so, wild and radical change you made. You got rid of timesheets. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, it was radical. Still is radical today in some ways, a lot of ways. Yeah, it was 2018, I think, is when we actually dropped them.
Okay,
I was trying to think.
I'm off by a year or two there.
2018 or 2019. So we've been talking about it for a while. I mean, obviously, I had read a lot of books. I'd read a couple of Ron Baker's books. Michelle Rivers. I'd followed her. I'd just tried to learn a lot about the concepts of value pricing, subscription pricing, and all that, because I always questioned why we were so focused on 0.6 of an hour charged to a client, and what value that was for me to spend so much time trying to track increments of time like that for clients, and how that justified what we did. Because as we all know, CPA firms have a billing rate, and they have a number of hours that an employee charges to a client. And what happens when the billers come along? They adjust it, and they usually write it down. Sometimes they write it up, but I guarantee you most of them write it down, and there's stats that prove that when you look at the national surveys. So who are we kidding? Why don't we take that time we waste? Because if you look at the accumulation of time over a year that's spent tracking all of that, how much time are you wasting that you could redeploy? Just the simple concept of redeploy that effort towards your clients. Nothing more. Just do that. And then, well, how do you figure out how to bill? And I look at a lot of people that question me over that early on and said, just take a 1040 client. Let's just talk a simple tax client. Tax client comes in, brand new client, has a return, shows it to you, look at it. You in your head know what you're going to bill for that client. And I say, yeah. Why are you trying to track time then? Well, I want to know if we make a mistake. Aren't there other ways to do that? What's more important, the outcome or the input? The input could be because you've got people wasting time or something, but how can we, there's a lot of different things there. So we did those concepts to try to build the understanding of how we could deliver value to clients through better conversations of understanding their situations, and then out of that, knowing what that way they would appreciate the value we have. that we deliver. And clients didn't really ever complain that they want to see a detail of our time. In fact, I maybe 1 out of 200 might ask something about that. They just wanted to know what the fee was. And so if they were getting a fee up front, they were more happy with it. And I think that became the reality is that they didn't care about how much time something spent. All of us knew that. They don't care that it took our staff accountant 6 hours to input your Schedule D transactions into that tax return. They didn't. They didn't care that it took our auditor 5 hours to do test counts of your inventory. They didn't care. They cared about the service we were providing them that was important for some reason. And so how do we eliminate time tracking so that we have more time to give to them for what they're seeking? That was really how I got our firm to believing that. I'll point out one challenge. You got to make sure that your team is confident in identifying change orders. If there's anything we learned, that was a key. And I'd been warned by another friend. But once you build the concept of value pricing or upfront pricing, whatever you want to call it, you also have to understand the concept of change orders is critical. And clients really don't resist if you're very upfront with it. And we found that to be the case. And then it's just a matter of you're working on how you build value for each client, and for each client is different to a great extent. The subscription model is a little different than that, and in a subscription model, I think process is even more important in a subscription model than it is in a true value pricing model. But I think that those are the key components that drove us to that, and why the firm continues to this day to do it. And the one challenge I would warn any organization is on change orders and the process of that. And I learned a lot about that through our experiences of doing it. Because the other part of it was, I didn't mention this, I'll just add in. So when we decided to change to value pricing, I went on a 90-day sabbatical. And they did it while I was on my 90-day sabbatical, because that's what I thought was the important way to do it. It wasn't for me to own it and lead it. It was for our other leadership and our key employees to do it. So anyway.
Were you worried?
No.
Go ahead, Michael.
Dustin, I just want to thank you for flipping the script so I could really listen to Dennis's answers here, because if anything, this conversation has given you and me the confidence to keep pushing our clients to, push past the we can't do that. I mean, just think about the two things that Dennis was at the forefront with his firm. They eliminated overtime during the busiest times. Who would say that could be done? Dennis said it could be done, and it was done. And then they moved away from timesheets and focused on value. So that for us, in all the work that we do, it's all about that mindset and that famous Henry Ford quote: whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And all of this started with Dennis posing the question and having a can-do attitude. So Dennis, thank you so much for sharing that. And for our listeners out there, yes, you can eliminate overtime in busy season, and yes, you can stop tracking time. And there's momentum going here. We're on the forefront of a top 100 firm doing just that. They're starting to get rid of timesheets. So
excellent.
Get on the wave.
Fun times ahead. Well, that's a wrap for episode 96. Michael, thanks for letting me be the MC on this one. I haven't done it in a long time, so I'll turn the reins back over to you for the next one. But thank you again, and we'll look forward to episode 97.